To start this video off, I'm going to show you a photo. There you go. Now, what do these three players in this photograph have in common? They're all wearing black. They all play for Hull City. But something that isn't obvious visually is that they were all signed on the same day. Whilst Modiame and Abel Hernandez would have their names written into Hull City legend, Hatem Ben Arfa would not. Arguably one of the best players we've signed on his day, with the highest of expectations, his day never came in a Hull City shirt. His poor work rate and attitude all came to a head at Old Trafford, and Ben Arfa would never play for the club again. Ben Arfa impressed during his time at Newcastle. Alan Pardew was fond of him as a player, but his attitude was very, very poor, and that rubbed the head-butting Hull City player Mong up the wrong way. At the end of the 2013-14 season, Ben Arfa was frozen out of Newcastle and forced to train with the under-23s. Ben Arfa needed an escape from Newcastle and wanted to head out somewhere on loan. It was the 1st of September 2014, transfer deadline day, as it's otherwise known, and Ben Arfa was close to completing a move to Hull City. He was supposed to be in Hull, but somehow, en route to Hull from Newcastle, he ended up in York. With the clock ticking towards the 11 p.m. cut-off, he urgently needed to send a piece of paperwork to Hull City to keep his hopes of joining the club on loan alive. Accompanied by his advisor, Michel Ouazine, Ben Arfa wound up at a hotel. He asked the concierge at the check-in desk if he could use their fax machine to send that paperwork over to Hull City. Ben Arfa called the club secretary at Hull, Matt Wild, who talked the concierge through what needed to happen. A Premier League deal sheet was faxed to the hotel from Hull. Ben Arfa signed it and the concierge scanned it and sent it back by email. The paperwork dispatched, giving Hull an extra 2 hours to complete the transfer. Ben Arfa said thank you and returned to his car with his advisor to set off again to Hull. Just a little side note, the concierge was a Sunderland fan. The concierge said, anyone leaving Newcastle is fine by me. On that deadline day, Hull City brought in a plethora of players. Brian Lennion, Abel Hernandez, Modiame, Gaston Ramirez, and finally Hatem Ben Arfa. Ben Arfa's announcement could have been completed an hour or so earlier, but en route from the York hotel to the training ground, he got lost as well. Even though the club had an extra 2 hours to complete the deal, the deadline was rapidly approaching, and murmurings of his move to the club strengthened. Media, fans, locals all gathered down Millhouse Woods Lane outside the training ground, looking to see which players would be completing moves to the Tigers. But still not assured that Ben Arfa would arrive on time, Steve Bruce got desperate. Bruce sent out some of his coaching team and training ground staff on foot to try and find Ben Arfa driving around the nearby streets of Cottingham. Eventually, they did find him, and the person who found Ben Arfa accompanied them in the car and directed them to the training ground, where Ben Arfa drove through the gates and completed his move to Hull City. Hull City announced the deal at around 40 minutes past midnight, posting a photo on their website of a smiling Ben Arfa holding a black and amber home shirt in front of the club crest. Ben Arfa said, "The manager wants me here, and that's very important. The welcome was amazing. I was almost crying at the warmth of it. I was shocked to see so many people there at midnight waiting for me. It was great, and I thank them." Steve Bruce told BBC Radio 5 Live, "Whatever's happened at Newcastle has happened. He wants to come here and play and get his career kick-started again. Hopefully, I can bring the best out of him." After the international break, Ben Arfa made his Hull City debut at the KC Stadium, as it was known then, in a 2-2 draw against West Ham, coming off the bench to replace Abel Hernandez, who had scored his first goal on his debut as well. And Mo Diame against his old club also scored on his debut that evening. The very next game of Ben Arfa's career was a return to Newcastle. Ben Arfa couldn't play due to loan agreements and ineligibility, but he arrived. Newcastle fans worshipped him. Hull City fans worshipped him arriving at St James's Park. And Ben Arfa was pictured sat behind the Hull City dugout, taking pictures with nearby Newcastle fans. Ben Arfa's arrival coincided with a decent run of form for Hull City. Just 1 defeat in 6, and 2 of those games were against Arsenal and Liverpool, both of them draws. However, his full Hull City debut came in a Capital One Cup tie against West Brom, and the 10,496 spectators in attendance at the Hawthorns that evening saw flashes of Ben Arfa's ability and pure brilliance. With a score at 1-1 early in the second half, he produced a tantalising snapshot of his qualities, what Hull City fans expected to see and what we thought we were going to get. Jagging infield from the right flank, taking on 4 Baggies defenders with an exquisite diagonal pass into the box, and Robbie Brady smashed the ball home. West Brom fought back to win that game 3-2 with 2 goals in the last 3 minutes. And that run and assist pass from Ben Arfa was his best moment in a Hull City shirt. Now, when Ben Arfa played for the club, I was very young. I was about 8-9 years old. I don't really remember too much about his time at the club. Everyone expected masses. Even at 8 years old, I knew the qualities that he possessed. I don't remember, as I said, him doing anything noteworthy in a Hull City shirt, but I remember him just having that flair and that ability that he could get something out of nothing. But to help me on this front, I have teamed up with a voice you Hull City fans may just recognise.
Now then, it's Luke from Tigers Blab podcast, doing this video for Joe, old Grandpa Joe, for his YouTube channel. I understand he's talking about Hatem Ben Arfa, so he's asked me as an older fan, to tell him some experiences about him actually playing for City, because I think he was too young to remember it. Do you know what? When we signed Ben Arfa, I think everyone was so excited. I remember the transfer deadline day where we'd stayed up the season before, and then obviously turned up at the training ground, and he was such a great player for Newcastle, and on his day he was an absolute match winner, wasn't he? So I think a lot of City fans really expected an awful lot of Ben Arfa, and I think maybe that was kind of the downfall a little bit. People expected so much. He was out of favour. It was Alan Pardew at the time who was manager, and obviously Bruce thought he could get a tune out of him. Signed a lot of players that season, some on loan, some permanent. Obviously he brought Abel Hernandez in, who was one of them. He's a fan's favourite, isn't he? And great goal scorer. Then he brought Rodriguez in, and then people like Ben Arfa, and it was a lot of flair players, and I think he'd let people like George Boyd go, and I'm not really sure if it was a wise decision in retrospect, but obviously hindsight's a great thing. I remember watching Ben Arfa play. I can't remember specifically which game it was, and he only played 8 games for us, I think. You may have to check your stats, and I'm sure you will. But I think he only played 8 games for us, because obviously he'd signed at the end of August, beginning of September. He clearly wasn't match fit. I remember he wore the number 34 shirt, and he was really effective, driving forward as a 10. But a lot of the time, the way that Bruce actually played, he kind of dropped as a second defensive midfielder behind Huddleston, because he was so starved of the ball. He kept dropping back, and he just wasn't anywhere near effective enough. And I think that frustrated him. I think he felt that he was going to a team where he'd kind of been at number 1 kind of flair player. But actually what happened was he tried to try to kind of get the ball, and he got it on all the wrong places. Obviously, Huddleston used to drop as a kind of fourth centre back, if you like. Bruce played three at the back, sprayed it out, and obviously he then tried to take the ball off him and kind of go forward with it. Didn't really work out, and obviously, as you know, it kind of went a bit sour. I think there's a stat when we got beat against Man United. There was a stat that Alan McGregor had covered more ground than he had in the first half, and I remember reading something that he just laughed at half time, like he was just laughing, like, I can't believe I'm around these players. And he soon did one. Didn't turn up for training. Bruce didn't know where he was, and then he ended up signing for Nice, I think. It could be Saint-Étienne. It was a team in France anyway. And actually, he couldn't play for them because he played for Newcastle United reserves and us. He can't play for three teams in the same season. And he actually didn't play football from January until the next season, so he re-signed for that team in France. But obviously, those were my memories of Hatem Ben Arfa. Up the Tigers. Keep up the good work, Joe. Speak to you soon, mate.
Thank you very much to Luke for that. His links are all down in the description. Make sure you check out his podcast, which he hosts with his friend Rich. Tigers, blah, blah, blah. So, let's move on to that game at Old Trafford. I was there. I mentioned it in the intro. Luke mentioned it. Hull City were on a poor run. 3 defeats in a row. We knew we'd have a tough time bouncing back because we were going to Old Trafford. On the 29th of November 2014, in the Premier League, Ben Arfa was named in the starting 11 for this game. But he did extremely little. He did so little to contribute that with no even analysis, any data about his movement, Steve Bruce brought him off in the 35th minute for Sonny Aluko, with a score at 1-0 to Man United. Steve Bruce was absolutely enraged at Ben Arfa for his poor attitude and will to do absolutely nothing at Old Trafford. Obviously, the place where Steve Bruce was very successful as a player. It came out at half-time, the analysts checked the data, and Ben Arfa had moved less than goalkeeper Alan McGregor. Wow. The game finished 3-0 to Manchester United, and Bruce immediately axed him from the clash with Everton in midweek, and also didn't feature in their Barclays Premier League fixture against West Brom the following Saturday. Now, the loan deal for Ben Arfa was due to be until the end of the season. However, after that shocking performance against Manchester United, the Tigers wanted to cut it short. Steve Bruce was not happy. He wanted to send him back to St James's Park. But before they had a chance to do that, Ben Arfa off. He went AWOL. There were rumours that he'd gone back to his homeland and was training in Paris on his own, getting himself sharp, getting his head in the right place. But Steve Bruce didn't have any idea where he was. On the 4th of January 2015, Hull City announced that they had terminated Hatem Ben Arfa's loan spell and sent him back to Newcastle. In his 9 appearances for the club, the Frenchman never tasted victory. Bruce said to the Hull Daily Mail, "What a dreadful waste of real talent. It's criminal because the lad can play all right, but I must question how much he's in love with the game. Honestly, in his last game for us against Manchester United, our goalkeeper ran about more than him. I had to sub him early because I needed sweat and fight in our position, and I wasn't getting it." One of Ben Arfa's Hull City teammates, James Chester, a man well loved for his attitude and desire whilst playing in black and amber, said, "The ability he showed in training is the ability that only certain players have. You could see why the gaffer brought him here. I'm not sure his attitude was to the level of everyone else. He could have used a bit of magic and scored a goal for us, but again, you just want to bang your head against the wall. It's the least you expect for someone to run around, and the most frustrating thing for us that you could see the ability that he had, for him to not really want to use it to his full potential. He's better than many of our players here." So it was more frustration. After leaving Hull City, Newcastle sent him out on loan to Nice. However, Ben Arfa, going back to his homeland, couldn't play because he'd already played in the 14-15 season for Newcastle's reserves. He'd played for us, and you could only play for maximum 2 teams in a single season. So Ben Arfa was loaned out to Nice, and they couldn't even play him. Newcastle terminated his deal at the end of the season, and Ben Arfa did join Nice on a permanent deal where he would really impress. He scored 18 goals in 37 games for Nice, and that earned himself a move to PSG. During his first year with the French Giants, he played 32 times and scored 4 times. He didn't feature at all in his second season with PSG and moved on to Rennes and Real Valladolid, where frustrations aroused again over his attitude and poor performance and lack of desire. He now is back in France playing for Bordeaux, who he joined on the 7th of October 2020. In 10 games, he has scored twice at the time of recording, and he scored his first goal for the club against his former club, Rennes. In conclusion, Ben Arfa was one of the worst players to be signed by Hull City. Not on pedigree. In fact, on pedigree and expectation, he was one of the best. But in terms of the expectations that were set and how he matched up to that, he was one of the biggest flops. Never tasting victory while on the pitch wearing the black and amber. As I said, thank you very much to Luke for giving us a little insight into what Ben Arfa was like. Obviously, I'm a bit younger than Luke is, so I can't remember what happened when I was 8, so he was a great help explaining what he was like for the club. So make sure you check Luke out in the description. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video. Give the video a like as well. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later. Goodbye.